In the year 3, a harsh dwarven captain from the Tangled Hammer received an unsatisfactory batch of recruits. So disgusted by them was he that he imposed the harshest penalty on them he could imagine. Exile to the gloomy fields, a scorching, terrifying biome in which no sentient, settled being can survive. The monarch, reluctantly, agreed to the penalty. No resources would be spared for the establishment of these sites. Only a single pickaxe and an anvil. Moreover, the harsh captain's suggestion that the pathetic exilees be given only the smallest amount of space was approved. The dwarves who were so sent off to die selected a location with a brook, clay, sand, and, allegedly, some metal. In the gloomy fields, there is nowhere to escape the reach of the goblins. If these dwarves are to survive, they will have to face such hordes eventually. This is their story.
To my dear family, I write to you to let you know that everything is going surprisingly well. Under my expert leadership, we quickly established a defensive position, repurposing a large section of the wagon as a hatch. While my attempts to repurpose another section as an axe were less fruitful, we succeeded at setting up a well. This place is miserable. We were attacked by an owl before we could even get underground, but it's not hopeless. There's ready clay and hematite here, and we have meat to last us for some time after slaughtering the pack animals. I must relate to you the most unnerving thing that has happened to us since our leaving, however. The skins and hairs of the corpses returned to life. More troubling, although less creepy by a mile, was that while we were digging a place for trees to grow underground, we heard the sound of skeletal elephants overhead, and the heavy splat of heinous mucus falling from the sky. One of the dwarves described it as, like the weather sneezing on you, but I think that's too kind a description. Anyway, at that time, I ordered the digging of a dining room. We are still stuck sleeping on the floor, as we lack adequate beds, but we have been living on decent meals. They have been quite oily, given the amount of fat we were working with, but that energy has been helpful while digging for the caverns. Oh, there was a marriage around the time that I ordered the dining room smoothed. I have ordered careful records kept of what we have on hand. Given how limited our resources are, a precise count will be necessary. Something strange happened. One of the previous bands of exilees must have struck the caverns, because before we did, we found sweet pods near the surface. This meant that, around the time that I ordered the engraving of the dining room, we finally had our first alcohol on hand. At the same time, I ordered an area for seeds dug out. I don't mean to alarm you, but some of the skeletons have treed themselves. It's bizarre. Cavies aren't big creatures, but there is a handful of their skeletons just staring at us from the trees. The dining room is an excellent sight. No individual carving is particularly great, but as a whole, I describe it as grand. Another marriage was held in that grand dining room, and we found our first plum helmet. We also found the caverns. The stench of a rotting corpse could be smelled from where we were, so we walled it off immediately. The possibility that undead could climb into the fortress is serious. The cavies are still watching us from the trees. 4 more refugees arrived, and they described the hateful glowers they got from the undead. I'm not sure how skeletons can glower, but that's how the refugees described them. There was a second miner with the refugees, but sadly no woodcutter. We are building up our supply of plump helmets, and digging out a large space for plants to grow. We're expecting a caravan sometime in the next weeks. Hopefully it'll allow us an axe. While we were building the depot, a miner fell asleep on it, but luckily the skeletons just watched from the trees instead of tearing them apart. Anyway, I would say that I have been wildly successful as an expedition leader, and from humble beginnings, I think we are rising like a star. If we could get our hands on an axe, we may soon have all the amenities anyone could ask for from a fortress, even here, in the middle of what could only be described as the worst place in the world. Yours, Kogan. P.S. I look forward to introducing you to Eater someday. She's prickly, but I appreciate both her patience and her willingness to start a fight when there needs to be one. And I think you will, too.